Good morning, everybody. It is about 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, July whatever, 6th? July 6th, yeah. July 6th. And a subscriber asked to start doing the Denon D7200 review process, so that's what we're doing. The unboxing, semi-unboxing, was uploaded just a little bit ago, and let's just start off with a sound comparison. The subscriber asked about what the 7200 sound like when paired with the Massdrop 789. I am going to do that today. I'm going to give you my listening impressions on the 789. Now, one thing we need to set clear about these headphones is just a general impression of Denon's headphones. And I think it's important to know what Denon's are designed to do. Now, the 7200 is referred to as a reference class headphone, and the MSRP is $1,000. Whether or not I think that the 7200s are worth $1,000 is long in the future. But $7,200 is a lot to pay for any headphone, especially a headphone that is marketed as a reference class headphone. And we know for a fact now, after testing so many headphones, that when companies say this is a reference class headphone, what they really mean is this is our take on what a reference class headphone should sound like. This is our opinion about what reference means. And for Denon, reference means being very similar to all other of their headphones, meaning Denons tend to provide more of a closed off feeling because they're closed back. So that's not necessarily a knock against them, but they also provide a generally warmer experience than other, quote, reference class headphones. And by warmer, I mean Denons tend to emphasize the bass. And you can find that readily in their lower level headphones like the D5200 or before that the D2000, because Denons want to provide that rumbly bass in the lower class. When you step up to the higher or the mid level, which would be in this case the 7200, what the Denon brand does is it stops emphasizing the bass as much, and you can see a considerable drop-off from the bass emphasis when you compare the 5200 and the 7200. And when you step into their premium class, which is the 9200, that's when things become ever so more noticeable between the two philosophies, which is providing a almost Sony-like emphasis on bass, not a knock against Sony's, almost a deep bass rumbly experience on the 5200 and the 7000, or not the 7000s, but the 2000s, compared to the 9200 or the 7000s or the 7200s, which become a little bit more for professional use. So that's what we're coming from. The 7200 has what Denon calls a free edge driver. It's a 50 millimeter dynamic driver, free edge driver made from nanofiber material chosen for its rigidity and low mass. This delivers an accurate pistonic motion without distortion and is also self-damping to cancel out unwanted resonances within the diaphragm. It's mounted in a soft, compliant surround, making it easier for it to move in response to the music signal without flexing or distorting for the purest possible sound. Okay, well, let's see if that is the case. Let's start off with our playlist, our test playlist. So let's go there. And we are going to start with mountains, as we always start with mountains. The headphone is plugged into the 789 using the 1/4 inch, because that's what was provided with the headphones. You can get balance cable aftermarket, obviously, for the vast majority of headphones out there. The 789 is currently at middle gain, so number 2 notch on the gain switch. I've driven these headphones on the highest gain, and there's a noticeable difference between middle and high, and low and middle, and low and high. But middle gain seems to be about the appropriate place to be for these headphones, at least in my personal opinion. The volume. Now, this is tricky because the 789 doesn't really have an indicator like where the volume is. It doesn't provide that information based on decibel points. So here's what I'm going to tell you. The volume knob is approximately, so off, meaning zero volume, is 6 o'clock. Okay? I have it around 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And that's fairly loud with the middle gain on the 789 for the D7200s. And so that's what I'm going to do. I have it at just about 9 o'clock. Plugged in, it's getting the 789, it's getting a signal from the SMSL SU8. It's balanced, but I'm using quarter, as I said. Plugged into my computer through the SMSL. Okay, so let's go. Let's start with mountains. And what are we looking for at mountains? We're looking for that rumble, and in the middle of the song, the big crescendo, when all the instruments come in, I want to know if the free edge driver can provide all that pristine sound quality and separate the sound. The other thing I want to know is whether these headphones provide a closed-off experience or a wide experience in relation to the fact that they are closed-back headphones. So it's really not fair to compare closed headphones to open-back headphones, because open-back headphones will generally provide a wider soundstage, a wider, more airy experience. That's not always the case. And there are some closed-back headphones that do provide an almost open-back experience. So let's find out where on the spectrum the Denons lie. Here we go. The slow tick-tock starts up. And I can hear the rumble that it's muted, it's not overemphasized. It rolls off fairly quickly, so when that rumbly bass comes in, it's very fast. It doesn't linger. I'm going to increase the volume to about 10 o'clock. There's another instrument playing on the left ear cup. The tick-tock is center stage. The rumble is all the way, if we're talking about layers in a cake, all the way at the bottom. The rumble doesn't distort the other instruments, which is very good. And the rumble is very fast. Now, in other headphones, the rumble kind of lingers a little bit longer, and that kind of starts interfering with the other instruments that are constantly playing. But the Denons seem to be very, very fast in the bass response with that rumble. And now the song is amping up. Let's skip to the middle so we can get to the crescendo. Here we go. It's a very clean bass response. And the rumble continues. And I don't think there's any real distortion. So let's stop. Let's go back to the middle. And here's what I heard my first impression. When the organ just comes in with force, there's a lot of rumble. And in some headphones, that rumble just pervades and destroys everything else. And you lose the depth of the song. You lose the details with all the other instruments. There are string instruments with this that are very pinpoint and precise. You lose that with headphones that emphasize the bass too much. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to gain 3, keeping the volume at about 10 o'clock, because I want to try to pump more juice into the headphones and see how much more I can get out of the diaphragm. So now I've switched it to gain 3. We're going to go back to the crescendo, and I want to see what the rumble is like, whether there is, a closed soundstage, wide soundstage, and if that rumble distorts any of the other frequencies, the other instruments. Here we go. That rumble is the best way to describe it, and actually it's not the best way to describe it, the only way I can verbally describe it without you sitting here and listening to it, is that rumble sounds really dark. It's very, very powerful. It's rumbly. It doesn't distort the other frequencies. So, for example, it doesn't overlap the string instruments, the tick-tock, and it doesn't drown those things out, but it also doesn't allow me to have an open soundstage. It's closed off. It's a much narrower experience on these headphones than it would be on an open back headphone. Obviously, that goes unsaid because it's a closed back headphone. It doesn't give you that wider soundstage. There is soundstage left and right, but it's not as if you are listening to an open back pair of headphones. It doesn't make you feel as if there is oodles and oodles of space for you to hear. It's airy. It doesn't sound airy on this song. It sounds more closed off, darker sounding. When that rumble comes in, there's this one point, and let me find it. I think it's about 205, maybe? Let's go back to 201 and I'll find it. Yeah. So between 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 5 seconds, the organ is just at full blast. It's coming in, and you can hear just that rumble, and the ear cups gyrate just a little bit because of that big, powerful bass. And then there's this tick-tock in the background. You can hear it's much more muted because that bass is so powerful. And then there's the string instrument that's playing around 2 minutes and 4 seconds. And it's supposed to be very pristine and precise. It gets drowned out because of the rumble. I can still hear that, high-pitched sound, whatever instrument that is, and I can't tell you what it is because I don't know what it is. But if you go to this song about 2 minutes, 4 seconds, the bass is going full blast, then there's this string instrument of some sort that's being plucked. And it's not particularly detailed. Let's try again, and I'm going to keep going beyond 2 minutes, 5 seconds. The bass is, I should be careful how I use my words. I'm not going to say it's overpowering because that makes me think Beats bass, which is overpowering. I think that the bass is noticeably more emphasized than anything else in this song. You could say that's probably because of the organ, and the organ has got all this great bass-like features, and that's true. That is very true. But in combination with the kind of narrower soundstage because of the closed back design, and because Denons are typically designed, headphones are typically designed to have a boost in the bass, it really doesn't allow for the higher frequency, the string instrument, the tick-tock, that is the other bass, to really come across as cleanly, as clearly. So I wouldn't say there's any distortion. I don't hear distortion in the song, meaning I don't hear the bass interfere with other sound frequencies and making it sound all weird. But the bass is just so emphasized that I can't really hear all the details in the other frequencies. So let's go back to about 2 minutes and 25 seconds, and I'll tell you another precise thing that I noticed. Here we go. So about 225, the organ and the bass instruments, they're done. And they're reverberating throughout now. It's just this low, rumbly reverberation that continues, and the other instruments come in, the higher registers come in, and they're playing, and they become a bit more precise because that organ is not playing anymore. It's just reverberating, and so you start getting more of that detail, but it's still closed off. It's not airy sounding. It's not wide. It doesn't make you feel as if you're being surrounded by music. Very vague terms, very personal experience. I understand that. And when I listen to this portion of the song, it doesn't make me feel as if I am sitting in a music hall and it's perfectly designed and all that sound is coming into me and I feel as if I am surrounded all sides by this orchestra. That's not the feeling I'm getting from this pair of headphones. What I'm getting throughout all of this is a good pair of speakers, and they're directed at my ears. And the room is not acoustically designed to take advantage of those good pair of speakers and make me feel as if I am immersed in the sound. That's not what I'm getting. I don't feel I'm being, quote, immersed in sound. I feel instead that the speakers are very good in what they're doing, but because of the total nature we've already described about the Denons, it doesn't give me the full immersion. Doesn't make me feel as if there's a lot of air, there's a lot of detail in the song, and there's some detail being missed in the higher frequency, in my opinion, so far. Precision-wise, like when the bass is very rumbly, so I can't say that it is distorted bass, but I think it's probably a little overemphasized for this song. And the reason is I'm not getting all the detail in the higher frequency. Even when the bass stops playing, even when the organ stops playing and it's just reverberating, the other instruments pick up because they're no longer being suppressed because of that much more loud, more in-your-face bass. But I'm still missing the pinpoint details. Now, I can increase the volume to near max and probably blow out my eardrums and the drivers, but I don't want to do that. I want to have a comfortable listening volume and still get the detail. I can increase the volume. Why not? Let's increase the volume to noon, and this is going to hurt. Okay, I increased the volume pot to noon. Here we go. Ow. Ow. Oh, that hurt. Okay, back to about 10 o'clock. Ooh, that was not nice. That was very loud. Even at higher volume, that's much, much louder than anyone would probably want to listen to these headphones. Even at higher volume, that bass is still too much. And the higher pitched instruments don't get me all that detail. They sound darker. They sound as if there's just not enough energy there. That's the impression I get. But let's move on to Haim, Want You Back. Now, Haim is supposed to be vocal-centric. There's a drum, there's a guitar, but it's really vocal-centric. There are three singers, the primary and the two backup. And the best headphones so far, out of all of mine, the best headphones so far to recreate this song have been the NAD HP50. And here's what the HP50 do. They are clean and crystal clear. No distortion. Very tight bass. But most importantly for this song, for Haim, is that the vocalists have their own individual tonalities. The backup vocalists on that headphone are left and right. They're not precisely in sync with each other, so there's a slight delay in how they sing, and they have their own tonality, their own frequency in their voice. And it was a pleasure to figure that out with those headphones. I have yet to find another pair of headphones that recreates the song in that manner. Let's see how the Denons do. Here we go. No sibilants. So the primary vocalist says words that end in S with the sibilants. The Denons don't allow it to become simpler. And like I said, I have this at about 10 o'clock maxed out on for my listening experience. I wouldn't want it any louder. Now, if we go back to about 22 seconds ish, the primary vocalist is saying and her voice cracks a little bit with the word and, specifically on the letter A. That's a micro detail that either comes out or it doesn't with headphones, and either it is natural or it just sounds muted and unnatural. It came out on the 7200s. Let me listen to it again. And it's exactly at 25 seconds into the song. I'm going to go back to about 22 seconds. I'm going to increase the volume to max on Spotify, still 10 o'clock on the amp. Here we go. Yeah, it comes at and it's not. It's more muted than I would personally like it to be. It's a micro detail. Whether you want it emphasized or not, it's a personal preference. It comes out. That's all that really matters. The fact that it's there, you can hear it. Yes, it's there. On the HP50, this very specific point in this song, the crackling of her voice was much cleaner, much clearer, and I think more natural, in my opinion. Do the Denons recreate that crackly voice? Yes, of course they do. They recreate it. And does it come off distorted? No, it's not distorted. Playing this song for 25 seconds, I can say this again. The bass is emphasized. And you get that full... Even the guitar, when the guitar is being strummed, when the guitar strings are being strummed, the reverberation just kind of carries through and it becomes more dark the longer they carry through, and then the guitar strums again. It just kind of melds into this lower or mid-range bass frequency, and it's not particularly detailed for the guitar in this song. It just kind of melds in with the other bass instrument that's playing. Let's keep going. There's also a piano here, but the piano is not airy at all. And the piano frequency, frankly, melds into, for some strange reason, kind of melds into the bass frequency. And it doesn't come off clear or differentiated. I can't say, there's the piano. It sounds so beautiful. I know there's a piano back there, but I can't get the detail out of it. I would say that the primary vocalist voice is not forward. It is probably neutral. There is no emphasis on the mid with respect to her voice. So if we're looking at the sound stage, like a theater stage, I would say that the bass is at least equal to the vocalist on this song, meaning they're at the same distance. If the vocalist is at the middle of the stage, the bass instruments are also at the middle of the stage, kind of center stage altogether, kind of grouped together. Where are the backup vocalists? Well, the backup vocalists are maybe a step or two behind, and also just a little bit to the left and to the right. That's the closed off experience that I'm getting from these headphones. Let's keep going. I will say this, that the backup vocalists, when they come in about 125, they're on left and they're right. And they have their own tonality, their own frequency. It sounds darker, meaning it sounds less airy, less open than on the HP50, for example. And they're not in sync, just like with the HP50. So I'm happy to hear that. Let's go back and let's double check. So 1 minute, 27 seconds. Let's start there. And they say in the back of the back of singers say, said it from the beginning. They echo what the primary singer just said. So between 125 and 130, that's what's happening. The primary vocalist says, said it from the beginning. There's a slight beat, and then the backup singers come in. They echo her, said it from the beginning, left and right. The left voice is just a hair faster than the right voice, meaning they're not in sync. They're not echoing exactly at the same time. They also have slight deviations in their tonality. So the right voice is slightly more high-pitched than the left voice is. That's a very, very good detail for these headphones to pick up. Let's keep going. Right around 1 minute and 40 seconds, what happens is the instruments come back, the guitar, the piano, the drum, with her singing. And everything is playing at, nothing is really being overemphasized by the musician. So it's not as if the drummer goes into this really hectic riff or anything like that. They're just playing. The problem is that there's no clean separation amongst all the instruments. They're all kind of grouped in together at the middle of the stage, crowded together. And even though you can pick out the different tonalities of each instrument, it's not as easy to do that because of that narrower soundstage. And everything is in the middle. It doesn't distort, but it also doesn't come out clean and clear and defined. Let's keep going. I correct myself. The only thing that does come out, other than the primary vocalist, cleaner than everything else, clearer and more defined than anything else, is the drum. And that drum strike, although it's not overemphasized, it's not going crazy, it just is louder than the piano and the guitar, and her voice is about equal to the bass, the way I'm listening to it. So, is it pleasant to listen to? Yes. It's a pleasant song to listen to on these headphones. Is it true reference class? I don't know. I mean, you would have to define what reference class is for you. For me, it would be listening to everything, having all the detail. That's what I would think is reference class for me. No particular emphasis on anything. Maybe it's because I love the HB50 so much on this song that I feel as if nothing can ever beat them. That could be my own personal bias. That being said, the experience I'm getting from the D7200s is a much darker experience, much more closed-off experience, as if everything is grouped together in the center of the stage. Let's go to Angel by Massive Attack, which is a bass-heavy song. There's a lot of electronic mumbo-jumbo, bassy stuff going on with it. And the idea is, will it distort? What happens? Let's find out. Max volume on Spotify. Here we go. Bass starts off quick. Ooh, that rumble is very, very powerful. Oh, good separation. So, here's the thing. When the song starts off, there's this like electronic grrr, rumble, like grrr. It's, how do I explain it? It's like one of those aftermarket mufflers on a car. And somebody revs their engine and you get and you get that feeling in your chest. I'm talking about the feeling, not the annoying noise that you hear, but that feeling, that resonance that goes through your chest. If that was translated to a frequency that you could hear, that's really the rumble that I'm talking about at the beginning of this song. Okay, so that comes out and it's unique because it's emphasized on the 7200s. And then the drum starts playing, And I thought that the drum would be kind of all melded together. It kind of sounded weird. It doesn't. There's a clean, clear drum strike, and it sounds precise and it's fast. What do I mean by fast? When the drummer hits, there's no continuing reverberation. It's just slap, hit the drum, move on. Slap, hit the drum, move on. Let's start again. The bass is coming. It's just rumble. It's like rrr. And the drum is going to be hitting now. There we go. And that just very precise hit. Just really rumbly in my ears. Here comes some higher pitch. I think it's some sort of horn instruments, wind instruments, or it's supposed to be. They sound much more muted than the bass frequency. Now, this is a bass-heavy song to begin with. So for Massive Attack, the only importance for them is the bass, and they want you to feel the bass. That does come out. That is absolutely true. The other higher pitch frequency, the horns or whatever it is that comes in right around 1 minute, is much more muted in comparison. It doesn't get sibilant. It doesn't get ear-piercing. It's just there as a detail. And it's not something that I would say is particularly enjoyable. It's a marker that the vocalist is about to sing now, which is true. The vocalist is about to sing in about a couple of seconds here. Like right now. The male vocalist is smooth, but his voice is a step back from the bass instrument. So if we're looking at the sound stage, all the bass frequencies are up front, near the front of the stage, and I would say that the vocalist is probably either in line or a step behind the bass instruments. No sibilance at all from the vocalist. Here comes the guitar. So when the guitar comes in around 2 minutes and 17 seconds or so, it's not particularly detailed. The bass is still playing, so the bass is going to keep on playing throughout the song from beginning to end. It's always going to be there. The guitar comes in, and it's an electric guitar. You hear it being played. It sounds muted. It sounds a little muffled in comparison to the bass. That you really can't get the detail out of that guitar. And then the vocalist comes back in, and I would say that the vocalist and the guitar are pretty much exactly the same volume and exactly the same presentation on the soundstage, right? So the bass is up front, the vocalist is a step or so behind, and then that guitar just comes up and standing right next to the vocalist. It's the way that I get it. Now, the vocalist and the guitar don't distort each other. It's not as if the guitar comes in and I can't hear the vocalist anymore, or the vocalist sounds weird. That's not what I'm saying. So there's good separation of the two instruments. It's just not particularly detailed, and it seems as if because of that closed-off nature, everything is crammed in together. It becomes harder for me to find that detail when it is present. Does that kind of make sense? Let's go to Scherzo for X-Wings, which is orchestral. Let's see how these headphones do with that. Okay, so here's what I'll say. I think that at this point, 4 songs in, I think it's probably safe to say that the Denons roll off the higher frequency. They don't roll off a whole lot. It's not like the Neumanns, which like there is no higher frequency. It's not that. It's just a roll off just enough so that it doesn't become ear piercing. When Scherzo starts, you have the horns, you have the wind instruments, and everything's just being blasted into your ear. Headphones that provide more energy in the higher frequency, they will become really, really sibilant to me, and it will get ear piercing, and it will hurt my ears. I have to turn down the volume. But as I said, the volume pod is about 10 to 11 on the 789. Gain is at 3. Spotify is at max volume. This is very loud for me. I mean, I would probably listen to the song no louder than this. And on other headphones, this song has become really ear-piercing. I've had to notch it down a little bit. On this, I am having zero problems. I could listen to this song all the way through repeatedly, and my ears would be perfectly fine. I'm still getting the detail out of the instruments and not getting the sibilance and the ear piercing. That's a very good thing to have here. Let's keep going. There's a bass instrument. There's like a big bass drum that comes in around. Let me find it again. Hold on. Right there, 30 seconds. It comes exactly at 30 seconds. So all the wind instruments and the brass and all that are playing up until then, up until about 30 seconds. And then that big drum comes in, and you can just feel the reverberation in your ears because the ear cups kind of reverberate a little bit. They shake a little bit. And then it just rolls off naturally, and then you get the wind instruments and the brass and all that stuff coming back about 31 to 32 seconds in. It's not a particularly wide experience, meaning it's not as if I'm sitting at the orchestra listening to this, and as I said before previously, as if I'm being surrounded by the music. It's a much more closed-off experience. The sound is being directed into my ears, and it doesn't feel as if I'm swimming in the music, and this is all vague and personal. I know, I get it, I understand. But I feel as if that the soundstage for the D7200s characteristically is much narrower. Would I say a classic close back narrow soundstage? Yeah, probably no worse than that. Yeah. I don't have a particular problem with this. It's not a particularly accurate representation of this song, because the bass, I think, is still slightly overemphasized. There's not a whole lot of bass in this song. It's a lot of just wind instruments and brass, and the drum comes in every once in a while to roll in and provide that emphasis. But I'm not getting all of the separation and all of the detail. I'm not, for example, getting the experience that there are multiple, I don't know, string instruments. There are multiple brass instruments. There are multiple wind instruments. Did I say wind instruments already? In other headphones, you can hear the separation, and you know that it's not just one big instrument that's playing, that there are multiple instruments in that group that's playing. So when that group stops playing and another group starts playing, or they're playing at the same time, and you can pick out like, oh my God, there's more than one instrument. I don't know how many, but there's more than one. The 7200s really don't provide that type of experience, in my opinion. They do provide, they're giving me the detail, just not enough of it. That's the way I experience it. So in other words, let's say that there's a brass section, and that brass section contains 5 instruments, 5 brass instruments. And then there's another section that has a wind section, and that wind section has 5 players. In some headphones, you can tell that there is more than one player in each of these sections. There's multiple. You just can't count them. With the 7200s, it feels as if it's just a loud volume coming from one section and then another section. There's no differentiation amongst the players within that particular group. Unless they're off key or unless they're, off time, it's not possible for me to hear the separation amongst those individual players in that group. Instead, what comes across is just a very loud sound from that group. Let's keep going a little bit longer. So right about here, about 1 minute 35 to 1 minute 40 seconds. A lot of stuff is going on. There's multiple instruments being played, and instead of picking out all the individual instruments in the piece, I'm just getting this one big conglomeration of sound. It sounds pleasant. It sounds good. It sounds easy to listen to, especially because there's no ear piercinginess and there's no sibilance. But it's not particularly accurate. I'm not getting the detail. That's what I mean by not particularly accurate. And the detail that I really want to hear is the separation of all the instruments. That's not present with these headphones. Okay? Let's go to... What should we do next? Let's do When You Walk Into the Room by Vic and Gab, which is, again, a vocal-centric song. It's a fairly simple song. It has a drum and a guitar, the vocals. Let's see how these headphones compare. Here we go. So immediately when the song starts, there's a drum and a guitar, and they're both playing at the same time. The drum, I think it's a little overemphasized on this song because the reverberation kind of starts butting into the guitar frequency, and even though there's a separation, obviously one's a guitar and one's a drum, it's not separate enough. It's almost like they're standing next to each other on the soundstage. And when that happens, in my opinion, I start losing the detail and I start losing the uniqueness of each instrument. It melds a little bit too much for my liking. Let's keep going. So the female vocalist comes in. The problem I have immediately is that she is supposed to be more forward than the instruments. She's not. She's either directly in line or about a half or one full step back. This is all imaginary, right? We're imagining a soundstage. But if you imagine that soundstage, you have the bass and the guitar. Then you have the vocalist. The vocalist is stuck in between these two instruments, either directly shoulder to shoulder or a step behind. And when that happens, you tend to start losing the song. You start losing the lyric. You start losing the emphasis and the beauty in each of these vocalists' voices. And that's starting to happen. I can hear her clearly. I know she's there, but her voice is not separated enough from the instruments for me to actually enjoy what she's saying. It melds just a little bit too much. Let's keep going. No sibilance. So around 35 seconds, she's stating her lyrics, obviously, and she says some S sounds. No sibilance at all. It doesn't even remotely come close to sibilant. So if you're treble sensitive and you don't like the S sounds, the 7200s seem to roll that off. And they do a very, very good job of rolling it off and making it sound kind of smooth. It just smooths it off at the end. And I could imagine that if you EQ this and just a couple of notches one direction, you could get some of that energy back, and it can become sibilant again if you wanted it to do that. I think that this is a pretty good implementation of trying to keep the treble frequencies just a little bit softer. I I don't have any other headphones right now that compare, so I can tell you exactly, and I can't remember one that does it as well. Maybe the LCD Too Close, but I don't think the LCD Too Close really does it as well as the 7200s. I think the Too Close really rolls it off a little too much, and it sounds too smooth. The 7200 is just, such a personal taste thing. And it's really difficult to put it into words. You have to sit there and listen and understand. But the best way for me to convey what I'm hearing is to say the following. When the S sounds come, it's almost peaky, but then the headphone says, hold on, and it just kind of gently directs it by the shoulder, by the elbow, slightly the other direction. And so it doesn't become offensive at all. Let's picture it a different way. Let's say you're walking down the street. You're on the sidewalk. And this big, lumbering guy is walking right in your path. And you can't go anywhere. Like, you are going to get run over by this guy who's walking right at you. There's nothing you can do. And somebody just walks right next to that big guy and gently touches him on the shoulder and just very nicely moves him one step to the right. And from that distance, the one step to the right, by the time he reaches you, you guys just walk past each other. There's, just enough room that you guys don't even touch. That's a way to kind of imagine how the sound feels. Like, it could be sibilant if the Denons wanted it to be. And they're just gently moving that sound away so it doesn't become sibilant. But that energy, that potential is still there. If you wanted to EQ, you wouldn't probably have to do a whole lot to EQ that up and get that sibilance back if you wanted it to do that. Unlike with some other headphones where it's just knocked off at the knees, like with the Neumanns, and you're going to have to really work at it to get that sibilance back up. You're going to have to EQ a little bit more. With the 7200s, it feels as if that process will be a lot easier because that energy is still there. It's not a whole lot that it's rolling off. It's just enough to be detailed enough, but not so much that it hurts my ears. That's the experience I get. Let's keep going. So the electric guitar is playing right about 52 seconds or so with the drum and her voice coming in. The problem I have is that electric guitar isn't emphasized. It's much more muted because that bass is more emphasized than the others. And her voice is pretty much dead center. The other problem I have is that there's supposed to be two vocalists, not one. And they're both supposed to be singing about the same time. They're both very beautiful voices. The problem is I can't get to. I hear one. And it's one very pleasant voice. I grant you that. It's just that I wish there was a separation between the two so that I could hear one and hear the other because they're supposed to have slightly different tonalities. And with the 7200s, I don't hear the separation. If I really, really concentrate, I ramp up the volume or I EQ just a little bit, I will probably be able to figure that out. Let me keep listening, but we're 52 seconds in. I've been stopping and going. I have yet to hear the separation of the two vocalists. Let's keep going. Okay, right here is the first time I have a hint that there are two. It's about 1 minute and 15 seconds. When they start saying, I want to be alone, there's this slight hint that there's actually two of them. And you could easily miss it if you don't know that there are two vocalists. Let me play it again. Yeah. When they say be alone, we want to be alone, with the emphasis on the word be, one one has a slightly different tonality than the other. But the fact of the matter is they've had a different tonality throughout the song. This is the only point at which I can actually hear that slight separation. Not particularly good at separating multiple vocalists, apparently. It's a very pleasant song to listen to. Just not detailed enough for my liking if I'm looking at a reference class headphone for $1,000. I think it's just missing a few details. Let's go to Flight from the City, which is a piano-heavy song. Okay, so I do hear some of that micro detail with the pianist moving back and forward on his bench. My concern is that it's not as detailed as it could be and is on other headphones. That micro detail comes across, but it sounds more muted. The other problem that I'm having is that the piano isn't particularly airy and wide and spacious. Sounds more closed off, as if you're listening to it on a very good pair of speakers inside your living room. And only so much can happen now. You're getting that closed off experience. In comparison to the Neumann, however, it's not as bad. The Neumann simply make it sound tinny. It doesn't sound tinny. It doesn't sound like you're in a shipping container. It just sounds to me as if the music, the piano frequency is a little bit more muffled. And the emphasis is still on the bass. And that's Charlie Drink. Every time in the middle of a review, he starts to do this. And so the piano is not as wide as I think it should be, and it is not as wide as other headphones have shown the piano on this song to be. It's not bad. It's okay. You don't get the full breadth and experience of the piano. Let's keep going. There's this buzzing like there's this electrical buzzing in the background of this song that permeates throughout it, and I can hear it. It's not very detailed. I mean, it sounds a little too muffled in comparison to other headphones that I've used. But it's a detail that does come out. The other thing is that when the pianist hits down on the keyboard, there's that thumping sound that happens. It's a micro detail in this song. The way that the 7200s reproduce that thumping sound is more of a reverberation, more than a sound. It's not a thump sound. It's a kind of a feeling. It's a reverberation in the ear cups when he's pressing down on the keyboard. it's a good intimate experience for these headphones on with this song. You know, this is a consistency. Now we've tested so many songs on this headphone. It's a consistency. This does not provide you a wide soundstage. On the one hand, it's a closed back headphone, so you really shouldn't be expecting a huge wide soundstage. On the other hand, because it is closed off, you get that narrower experience, and everything just seems a bit more muffled, and it sounds just a little bit less differentiated than it could be. There's no distortion. I'll grant Denon of that. There's no distortion. Instead, what comes across is some details are missing because the bass is overemphasized or because the vocals are not ahead. They're just kind of either in line or a step behind the bass. So that seems to be the continuing theme here, is that the bass is still too emphasized for it to be neutral. And if you're looking at reference class headphones, whether or not you want them to be neutral, if you're looking at reference class headphones, at least you want to be able to get all the detail out of your mix. And if you're missing things like multiple vocalists, different tonalities, separation of instruments in a group, that may be a negative for you. But if you're sitting there and you just want to listen to music and enjoy the kind of the warm, comforting tonality to it, then these are good headphones. But for $1,000 MSRP, but for $1,000, you can get a very similar experience with much, much cheaper headphones. The piano doesn't sound bad on these headphones. It sounds more intimate, like it's being played for you in a closed room. And if that's the type of experience you want, then great. I think the Denons do a very good job. It's just that because the bass is overemphasized, you may not get the full experience of the piano frequency. At least that's what my impression is. That's what I would want. I would want a little bit more out of the piano frequency. Okay, let's do one last one, which is New Light by Kazuki. That has wind, and it's like a very atmospheric song. It's got wind and rustling of the grass and walking on grass, and then kids playing in the background. Let's see how well the Denons do with that. There's a bass instrument that is so heavy and emphasized that I'm missing out on a lot of the details in the song. The wind rustling, completely missed. It's supposed to show up within first few seconds of the song, and I can't pick it out. Now we're almost 40 seconds into this song. The footsteps on the grass, I can't figure it out because of the rumbly bass that's going on. There's this other more high-pitched frequency instrument that's mixed into it that comes in, but it's muted because of that overemphasized bass. I have still yet to hear the kids that are playing in the background in the song. Let's keep going and see if we can find it. No, I can't find it. Maybe they're very muted. Let's go back a little bit further. Yeah, there it is. Between 12 and 14 seconds, you can barely hear them. I mean, it's so difficult. I've heard this song many, many times on many different headphones, so I know where that sound is supposed to be. And now that I went hunting for it, I found it, but it's so damn difficult to find it. It's so muted in the background and drowned out by that overbearing bass that if you didn't know that detail was there, you would never find it. Not on these headphones. So, once again, a very closed off experience to this song. Not airy, not open, not detailed enough. There's not enough separation amongst all the instruments and the parts of this song, the mix in this song. Maybe for you that's okay. Maybe that's not a big deal for you. But if you're listening to an atmospheric mix like New Light, the whole pleasure, I would think, of listening to it is picking out all that detail and hearing all those things differentiated. And if you can't get that, then what are you listening to? Just a bass rumble, really. That's maybe to some people that's pleasurable, but if you're looking for atmospheric music and that's what you want to enjoy, the 7200s really probably aren't going to produce that for you and the way that you want. So overall sound impression of the 7200 is, I wouldn't say these are reference class headphones. At least not when I define reference for myself. For me, it would be clear differentiation amongst instruments, tonalities, undistorted, defined instruments, meaning they all have their own particular pitch and emphasis, and nothing gets drowned out. Nothing is particularly overemphasized. Now, you can have an emphasis on a frequency and still get separation and clarity and definition. The Denons do provide clarity. There's no distortion. The Denons do provide some separation, just not a whole lot of it. And the Denons have this emphasis on the bass. Is it good emphasis? Yeah, I think it's fairly neat emphasis. It's not distorting the other frequencies, as I said. It's just not allowing me to hear all the other frequencies. It's suppressing it. On the other hand, if you're very sibilant and treble sensitive, these are really, really good headphones to still have the potential of EQing and getting that energy back if you wanted to. But it's just so gentle in sidetracking that sibilance away from you. It's probably the best experience I've had in that regard so far. Actually, one last thing I wanted to check was drum solo by Jack Bruce and Simon Phillips. I didn't do that, and I should. Here we go. So at the very beginning of the song, there's a bunch of people in the crowd that start clapping and yelling, and on other headphones, it gets really ear-piercing. It hurts my ears. The Neumanns prevent that from happening. So do the 7200. It's just, there's no sibilance. It doesn't hurt my ears, even at the volume I have already set this to. Let's keep going. So one thing I could hear is when the drummer is hitting the drum head, there's not a hard slap to the drum. It's just more of a muffled drum hit on the top of the drum head. But immediately after that, I do hear kind of like the drum, the bottom falling out of the drum, essentially, boom, like boom, because the air is being compressed downward from the drum strike. It comes across. It certainly is easy to find. It's not as clean or defined as on the HP50, which, if you go back and you watch my review for the HP50 or the sound test between the HP50 and the Neumann, the HP50 does a phenomenal job of recreating that experience of the drum just falling out from underneath. It's like boing. You can hear it. It's so natural. The 7200s do recreate that, kind of the bottom of the drum falling out sort of experience. It just sounds more muffled than I've heard it before. So when he starts hitting the drum head much harder, you get this sharper clap on top of that drum head. It still sounds a bit muffled. It's definitely not as muffled as on the Neumanns, but it's not as visceral as, say, on the XC or the Atticus, or even on the HP50. I think the HP50 had a little bit more visceral than the 7200s do. Slightly more muffled, rolls off that sharp edge. So again, if you're sibilant treble sensitive, this would be good because it gives you most of what you want without giving you the ear-piercing nature of that hard clap, that slap on top of the drum head. And yet again, a much more closed-off experience, as if you're sitting in a room, you're sitting in a small dining room, and there you got the drummer on the stage, and he's riffing, and there's a bunch of people in the room, and that's the type of experience that I'm getting. Very closed off, still fun to listen to, but just a bit too dark, a little too, undefined for my taste. Even though that there's, good emphasis on the bass, I think that a little bit less emphasis, a bit more neutrality to the bass frequency would allow you to experience the song much more naturally. And because of that slight emphasis on the bass, I'm feeling as if there's kind of a muffled sound. It's definitely not as bad as on the Neumanns, but that's not as good as on the HP50 in my opinion. But we'll get to that. We'll do a review between these two, the HP50 and the 7200s. So overall impression now at this point is that the Denons are true to their style, to the Denon philosophy, which is a darker toned headphone with emphasis on the bass and slightly rolled off higher frequency. That seems to be the case here. And whether you want that type of tonality is totally up to you. Whether that's the type of headphone you're looking for, if you're that sensitive to treble, then this is a very good, I think, in my opinion so far, this is a very good compromise between the Neumanns being, kind of like, I'm never going to give you that detail, and I'm definitely going to mute everything, versus you being a little too visceral, like, this is piercing my ears, like with some open back headphones, like 1990, for example, or the Atticus or the XC. The 7200s take a slightly different approach, which is it provides you a lot of that energy in the higher frequency, but rolls it off just enough so that it doesn't hurt you. And if you wanted to get that extra energy, you can probably do it with the EQ, because you can just feel that there's just enough there. If you wanted to, you could do it. That's the impression I get. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any further questions or comments about things you want to know about the 7200s, let me know. I will obviously be happy to upload any additional videos to supplement this one. I know this is long, but that's what detailed means. You have to kind of drag this out a little bit sometimes. There's going to be more reviews between the 7200s and other headphones. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to use the 7200s with other amplifiers that I have and just go through the gamut like we usually do with headphones. Now, if you have a specific question about a product I have reviewed, you have a specific request, hey, can you check on this frequency, or can you compare this with this headphone that you have? Let me know. I'm happy to do it. I mean, I address these issues often with subscribers, and I'm happy to do it for you. Now remember, I'm not clairvoyant. I don't have the ability to know exactly what you want the review to contain. There might be things in a review that you never hear and you really want to hear, and I don't know what's inside your head. So if you feel as if a review isn't as detailed as you want it to be, well, you have to tell me what it is that you want. And if you let me know, then I will cater to you. I'll upload a video just for you about that very specific issue, and then it's geared to you. There you go. I have no problems doing that. But I do have a problem with anybody who says that my reviews fail to give them detail, which is completely not true. And if you have a specific thing that you want to know about, use the comment. Let me know. Tell me exactly what you want to hear, and then I'll work on it. Otherwise, you're just complaining for the sake of complaining. Have a wonderful day. It's Saturday. Enjoy your Saturday. It's going to be such a great day. The sun's out. It's a good temperature, at least where I am. I hope you enjoy your Saturday. Tomorrow is Sunday. Tomorrow is the big game. USA versus Netherlands. Definitely going early to a bar and watching that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for commenting and making recommendations and critiquing. And I truly appreciate all of you. You are wonderful. Each and every last one of you are wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Without you, this channel would not be possible. And I appreciate all your goodwill, and I appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful, amazing Saturday. Talk to you later.